Hello and welcome to News. I'm Juhi Rajput. In today's episode, we're bringing for you the International T&D Conclave. And the theme of the conclave is Global T&D Opportunities for Indian Industry, Challenges and the Way Forward. And in the panel, we have with us Mr. Subramaniam V. Iyer, Director, Department of Sustainable Energy, the World Bank. Mr. Ghani Mohammad, DG of Ministry of Electricity, Government of Iraq. Engineer Beks Dagogo Jack, Chairman, Presidential Task Force on Power, Government of Nigeria. Mr. Derek Lickorish, Member UK, Government's Department of Energy and Climate Change. Mr. Ajoy Mehta, MD, Maharashtra Electricity Distribution Company. And Mr. Sanjeev Sardana, Chairman, ELECRAMA 2014. Well, I'd like to start the discussion with Mr. Iyer. World Bank supports projects mainly in the area of grid expansion, rural electrification, renewable energy, as well as developing energy-efficient solutions. Till now, the bank group has provided more than $60 billion funding for energy projects. So what would be the total funding you're looking through World Bank and its associates by 2030 in transmission and distribution area, and which all countries?
A sustained investment level of about $100 billion a year between now and 2030, I would say that we are looking at about $40 billion times 15, $600 billion between now and 2030 for transmission and distribution. You see that in mature markets, there is more a shift towards transmission and distribution systems that are more like rebuild to take account of advances in technology, advances in the way that you want to create smart and intelligent systems. But a lot of the investment will go into areas where such infrastructure does not exist today. So I think the important thing for companies to look at is their appetite for risk, what mitigation mechanisms are available to them in particular markets for those risks, and how to reach out and try to figure out the types of alliances and partnerships that they want to build in order to manage local risk. I think those are the key elements.
Mr. Mehta, I'd like to ask you, massive capacity addition and upgradation plans undertaken across the globe translates a huge opportunity for them. How do you see the opportunity for Indian equipment manufacturing industries, and based on your experience, what are their strengths?
The biggest strength is adaptability. Equipment being very distinct to weather. And finally, our open system of doing things. These are the three strengths that we have. And of course, we do have some weaknesses in terms of quality at times that gets compromised, time to delivery that gets compromised, but I think these things can be overcome, and we can use our strengths to expand not only in India but also abroad.
Mr. Mohammad, what opportunities Indian manufacturers have in your country, and what are your expectations?
We are dealing with electricity, and manufacturing for which serve electricity is more important for us, like substations, lines, and towers, conductors, and so on. This is fittings, all for using for electricity. This is more important for us.
Mr. Lickorish, India exported electrical equipment of around USD 4.9 billion in 2012-13. So what kind of opportunities you see in Western countries for them, and how could they increase their export share in these countries?
There is a question for the India's transformer and distribution business to be looking at standards, how they will marry up with what's required elsewhere, because there are different standards for a lot of this stuff, or some of it's being harmonized. So there has never been a better time to look for investing around the world, because this challenge of replacing huge post-war assets that were put in the 50s and to manage the decarbonisation of energy, and this whole system balancing issue requires lots of transmission and distribution infrastructure. So I think it's about presence, it's about quality, and it's about price. And I think that that should be possible on all counts.
Mr. Sardana, I'd like to take your views. Quality and price, these are two important factors. So do you think Indian manufacturers are capable of providing world-class quality products at competitive prices?
We are definitely very price competitive. We make world-class standard products. Of course, some challenges have been there, but consistently the industrialists have been improving upon R&D. They've invested in manpower training. They've upgraded their facilities, and definitely getting more and more global share. I would like to share that, as an individual industrialist, as a small, medium enterprises, when we started, today we are almost a $30 million company, and we export 60% of the revenues from overseas, from Middle East and Africa, and we have 3 overseas operations, and we're very happy with going global, and that's one reason I thought of a team called Go Global, where I can share my own experience, bring my network to the industry, and convey a very loud message: think global, and we need to go abroad, and make sure that India presence is felt, and Indian products are really acceptable, made in India for the world.
Do you see any challenges for Indian manufacturers when they approach different markets?
Yes, challenges are, vary from countries to country. For example, today, if Indian manufacturers wants to export to US or in Europe, they got to meet international standards which have been prevailing there, which is a bit of a tough call for the Indian manufacturers, because we have actually not too much of resources in terms of research and development and technology upgradation. But looking at the developing economies, like India is also a developing economy, if you look at the business which Indian companies have been doing in Middle East and Africa, we have been able to maintain the same standards, and today we have a lot of Indian companies who have success stories of executing billions of dollars worth of exports in terms of supply of equipments, doing EPC projects, and they've been, maintaining all international standards.
Coming to you, Mr. Dagogo, World Bank Group is to undertake its biggest financing program in Nigeria's power sector, which is going to be the largest of any such program carried out anywhere in the world. How do you see the power sector improving in next 10 to 15 years' time in Nigeria? And what business opportunity it provides for Indian industry for partnering in Nigeria's power sector development?
We have our projections. We want to grow power from where we are at about 6 gig to somewhere around 30 gig. Knowing the Nigerian economy and our ability to take advantage of markets or privatization or privatized markets when they are introduced. Indian businesses are already in Nigeria in different formats, and I think most of them would be worthy ambassadors to those who have not come in there. I would only say that in relative to the Nigerian market, I could advise that a lot of Indian businesses have come to Nigeria through what I would call not the most efficient relationships. Some of them have been brought into the market by people who are, for want of better description, middlemen, and they're not necessarily businessmen. They're looking at their bottom line. They want to get commissions and what have you. And they can put pressure on your brand. They can put pressure on your brand. They can put pressure on your integrity. They can force you to do things that you may ordinarily not want to do, but because they don't share the brand risk with you. They need to also deal with data on Nigeria as it truly is. The world is in competition, even within the African continent. So sometimes our news have taken front page so that somebody can look prettier. But it doesn't mean that all that news is true.
There is investment in Iraq. We told to all companies to make investment in Iraq, no problem. The Iraq is now more safe than before.
I'd like to take views of Mr. Lickorish as well. Would you prefer, what kind of an entry mode are you looking for? I mean, how would you allow an entry of manufacturers in your country?
Well, it's in the UK as in the same way as Europe. I mean, it's not difficult to come and set up in one of those countries. There's free movement of capital in whatever you want to do, but you have to be careful you don't lose your competitive position. But I think the USP is to build quality products that meet the standards at an attractive price, and if providing you can transport them, I don't see any problem with that. But having a manufacturing base with local salaries and those sort of things, I think would not give you the edge that you're looking for.
Indian Energy Exchange, India's premier power trading platform.
From manufacturing of energy cables to EHV installations to renewable energy solutions to retail energy products, our technology energizes lives. Rovin, energizing lives.
करेगा?
पढ़ूंगा। रात को बंद तो नहीं होगा?
2 दिन तक पढ़ पाएगा।
L&T Diva Solar Lantern with built-in mobile charger. चले कई रात बस एक चार्ज पर।
Power Grid Corporation of India, the central transmission utility, world-class integrated global transmission company with dominant leadership in emerging power market, ensuring reliability, safety and economy. Power Grid, building a smarter grid.
Mr. Sardana, Middle East and there are other emerging markets where electricity consumption is expected to grow at CAGR of 15%. And Middle East regions especially are attracting huge investment in power projects. And therefore there exist ample opportunities for Indian manufacturers. And these regions are Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. In presence of global T&D giants in these regions, what challenges Indian manufacturers could face for increasing their export share?
Juhi, a lot of investment, as you said, is already coming up and is visible on websites, especially in Middle East. Saudi Arabia alone has got an ambitious plan of investing about $500 billion in the next 5 years on strengthening up and adding up new T&D. A lot of world-class players are there, but Indians are also playing a very big role. Companies like KEC, L&T, Crompton Greaves, some of the big names in India are already there. And I'm really pleased to announce that today Indian companies are actually going in Europe and the United States, acquiring companies, and wherever they have challenges of Indian companies not getting accepted, they're acquiring companies in Europe and US and making entry into these markets through that route. And they're doing brilliantly well. And there are a lot of success stories, Today we have, at least among our council members and senior members here who are sitting here, are doing at least $2 to $3 billion worth of EPC contracts alone in Middle East, especially in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So I see a great opportunity. Of course, challenges are there because wherever you are, basically going headstrong with an established player, but at the same time, if we qualify technically, meeting all their technical norms, all the requirements, we have relevant track record, credentials of doing and executing jobs, I don't think so it should be a big challenge for Indian companies to entering into those global markets. And definitely, the investments now between Africa, Middle East, and developing nations, it's about not only billions of dollars, it's trillions of dollars. And India's, as we have laid our ambitious growth plan from $5 billion to $25 billion, is doable. And I won't be surprised that in the next 5 years, we actually achieve from our current $5 billion status to at least $7.5 to $8 billion. It's a big challenge. Indian companies have to gear up to meet international standards to meet, business requirements. And I'm sure we're all capable, competent, and there's no reason why we cannot do it.
Mr. Mehta, developing nations of Middle East, Central Asia, West Asia, and Africa are undertaking massive electrification programs. So according to you, how this opportunity could be translated into business opportunities for Indian companies? What are your suggestions?
Very strongly, we need to put up a policy framework in the country which encourages Indian manufacture. Please don't misread me as creating a playing field which is not level, but create a level playing field in the country so that volumes grow in this country and you are of that size where you leap into the foreign markets. That's the first thing that we need to do. And IEEMA actively needs to get up shout that these are the policy changes we need, and this is what will make us world-class players. That's first. Second, we need to also look at where the foreign markets are moving. I'm sure we are capable of tapping that market. We need to sit with people like him, sit with policymakers, and what is their thinking, where is the future, and start getting ready to move into those markets. The third is markets which are emerging, growing markets, growing countries, developing countries. That again has a huge scope because they're just starting up. We've been through the startup stage. We have that experience. We have done that. We can really get into there, do hand-holding, tell them what can be done, and take it forward. So I think if we dissect it into three parts, government policies, how Europe is moving into the future, and developing countries, how they're starting up. If you look at these three, I think sky is the limit.
Since we're talking about policy, how are you planning to incentivize the investors?
We pretty much spelled out the model for incentivizing investment in the generation side, which is actually where the energy is produced. Tariff is a major tool for incentivizing investment, and we have a very transparent tariff model. It's a 5-year, multi-year tariff order. It is reviewed annually to reflect inflation. Gas is an automatic pass-through, so whenever there is a fuel cost increase, it passes through to the customer, and that is by law. To that extent, tariff is a major, major tool. Government support is a major, major tool, especially in renewables as well as in rural penetration. Government has provided incentives, put their balance sheet behind programs. So government is a major player in that respect as well.
Mr. Mahmood and Mr. Lickorish, how are you providing government support to different investors?
Government support all companies and directorates for making and safe and support anything.
Mr. Lickorish.
The fundamental big capital, the 140 billion, I suppose if you look at the mechanisms by which these will be paid for, and I've shown in my presentation, these are all costs added to consumers' bills. So there's not an issue of concern about the government not paying for them. It's just not like that anymore. There's enthusiasm for investment in the UK, in the generating, in all those sectors. But the market structure, the framework that sits around it, is robust, and I would suggest that is the kind of support that it needs and facilitates that.
Indian Energy Exchange, India's premier power trading platform.
Jal, jal, jal.
जल से जल तक, megawatts से megawatts तक, SJVN Limited.
Power Finance Corporation, the most preferred financial institution, providing affordable and competitive products and services with efficient and internationally integrated sourcing. PFC, partnering the reforms in the Indian power sector.
Mr. Iyer, there is a need of integrated planning approach in developing a long-term policy framework for meeting the future energy need and creating an efficient T&D system and network. So what are your views on this?
In our engagement with countries in trying to find the right formula or the right sort of setting in which these commercial principles can be established, we have come to realize that you have to work from an integrated, which was the first part of your question, that we have to start looking at an integrated view of the sector, where you are today, where you want to be in 15 years' time, and what it would take in order to create the building blocks for you to take that path to achieve those goals. And many of this has to do with proper sector planning. It has to do with understanding demand and resource characteristics within the country. In some cases, you may have to rely on resources which are not available within your borders. They may be available outside your borders. So you have to look at power or energy trade issues. There's a lot of thinking that goes into capacity. We saw the tremendous capacity deficit in terms of human resources in Nigeria, which was put up on the chart. This story is repeated in country after country. You have to build up those capacities as well. So there are a set of accompanying policies that go with that integrated planning that needs to be brought in, phased in over a period of time. So this is not something that happens overnight. I mean, we started the process in Nigeria back in 2002. In fact, I was the task team leader at that point when we were talking about the policy and the regulation and the new law that we put in place. And we are today in 2013. So it has taken almost 10 years for Nigeria to make this transition from an integrated monopoly to a liberalized market where private investors are coming in and agreeing to provide the services and the investment. So it is a complex process. In most countries, the problem is the sustained political commitment that you need in order to carry this kind of reforms and this kind of change through. And with successive governments and change of political leadership, how to sustain it becomes the challenge. So you have 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of syndrome, and you're not able to reach the goals that you set out in the beginning.
Let's take a final comment from all the panelists that according to you, what is going to be the major challenge for Indian and manufacturers in increasing their global share, and what should be the strategic focus of Indian companies to tap the global opportunity, in few words?
It gets more complicated when you're looking at generation investments, because there you have to put capital at risk, you have to leverage your equity to get commercial banks to come in and provide long-term debt. And that for many companies that have not had the experience of going into foreign markets can be quite challenging. And that, to my mind, requires a different set of skills, a different set of competencies, and maybe a different set of partners to work with. And then look for ways in which you can mitigate those risks through proper guarantees, through political risk insurance, and to make sure that you are covering those risks in a proper way. But I think the underlying thing for companies in this room is that for transmission and distribution business, it is probably easier to make foray into foreign markets than it is in other parts of the supply chain.
Looking at the opportunities globally, there's a lot of interest from even the new companies who have never exported are looking at exports. And especially with IEEMA, where we have taken the initiative of promoting Made in India brand for the world. All I can say, we are doing it, we will do it, and we can do it.
Despite recessionary sentiments, global T&D opportunities galore, and Indian companies need to have a strategic focus to tap the same. The challenges are indeed daring and need to have a deeper introspection and views from a wider spectrum of stakeholders to chart the way forward. There's also a need to eliminate weakness and build upon your strengths. Global T&D opportunities give you a chance to be a part of development and growth stories of different nations, and thus making a difference in lives of citizens of those nations, electricity being an important ingredient for economic development and quality of life of people. With this, I'd like to thank all the esteemed panelists for joining us here in this discussion. Thanks a lot.